Initiating startup sequence.
We interrupt your regular broadcast to bring you this important news bulletin.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Now look at, I say look at here!
SpartanYouthRadio.com.
This is Caitlin Dugan for Spartan Youth Radio with a special report on a band most Northern Ontario teens haven't heard of, but who are finding huge crowds around the globe. Simply put, Abney Park is a band from Seattle, Washington that mixes elements of industrial dance, world, and steampunk into their performances. They have taken on steampunk personas claiming to be a band of sky pirates aboard the airship Ophelia. On the phone, all the way from Seattle, is Captain Robert, who does lead vocals, plays the darbuka, a type of goblet drum, and the button accordion. Welcome to the HMS Spartania.
Thank you, Caitlin. The first thing I want to say, though, is we never claimed to be sky pirates. We've been denying that for years.
Well, it seems to be following you.
Yeah, I have no idea where that reputation came from. If anybody's got any proof, I'd love to see it.
To get us started, can you describe steampunk so that our listeners know what we're talking about?
Yeah, steampunk. Well, steampunk it started as a literary genre. It was actually... I mean, the term is fairly recent, but the aesthetic goes all the way back to Victorian times. If you think about what the people back in the days of Sherlock Holmes would have daydreamed that the future would be like, then that's pretty much what steampunk is. Back 100 years ago, you know, people assumed that in the future everybody would have airplanes and airships, and they would all get to work on jetpacks, and everything would be made out of brass and wood and leather and would be gorgeous and elegantly done. Well, obviously today, in the era that we're all living in, everything is not that way. Everything's made of plastic. Everything is beige and gray and bland and made as simply and as ugly as possible so that people can sell 1 million copies and make $1 million. Well, steampunk is sort of recapturing that old aesthetic, but with updated technology. Now, like a lot of other aesthetics, like Gothic or industrial, it started as a literary genre, but it sort of has grown in our era into a subculture. So now, steampunks are sort of this gangly mob around the world that's slowly gathering of people that modify everything their own, from their cars to their clothing. They go to steampunk concerts dressed in this sort of retro science fiction Victorian look. It's crossed into music, it's crossed into literature. It's actually been in movies for a long time, since movies are more closely tied to books, and books have had the steampunk genre for 100 years.
Abney Park isn't just a band. It has its own clothing line that mixes the Victorian and post-apocalyptic. What's in your closet, and what are you wearing today?
Okay, so let's see, what am I wearing today? I've got a pair of colossal brown boots on that started life as a pair of New Rocks, which kind of look a little bit like brown motorcycle boots, only I replaced all the logos and branding on them with antique bits of, like, I've got drawer pulls from 100-year-old dressers. You go to the antique store and you rob these little bits of decorative ornaments. You rip off all the modern stuff from your outfits and replace them with this kind of stuff. After that, I've got a pair of faded old brown cords on, a sort of a antique leather holster thing that I keep my wallet and phone in, a belt, and then I'm wearing sort of a dark tan Chinese vest kind of thing. That's about it. It's a casual day. I mean, the most over-the-top stuff we own is obviously the musical instruments we've played on stage. Christina now has a whole, basically a garage full of old these steampunk modified keyboards with Tesla arrays with fire, and they're all ornamental and copper and brass and tubes and pipes and gauges. Yeah, in our studio we've got stacks of different musical instruments, all that are sort of steampunk from hilt to herd. We've got the clockwork guitars with covered in gears and ornamentation. The flintlock bass is made of old parts of old flintlock pistols. My chronodynamic microphone, which is about the size of a small pizza and looks like an exaggeration of those old microphones you see in old movies, with all the spring-loaded apparatus holding the microphone element in the center. I guess the studio itself is sort of the best representation of steampunk, as it's sort of everything from the gold molding around the room to the airships hanging from the ceiling, to the vintage modified instruments and gear and Persian lamps and Middle Eastern drums. I think you can see it. G4 TV has done a bit on us, and they've been rebroadcasting it for the last couple of weeks, and you can get it on iTunes. And they did some filming in our studio with us, with performing live.
So is steampunk becoming more popular? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think I've got a different opinion on this than a lot of other steampunks. I don't actually think steampunk ever wasn't popular. I think it's just that the name is getting known. We've been seeing these movies for forever. I mean, basically every time you see a movie or read a book about Sherlock Holmes where he's got technology in it that didn't actually exist, that qualifies as steampunk. So, I mean, this thing has been around for a long time. As a subculture, it's only just starting to grow. Maybe over the last 3 or 4 years, it started to emerge as a subculture. Whether or not it's actually going mainstream or just being curiously viewed by the mainstream public, well, we have yet to be seen. But I personally don't mind it. I'm not ashamed of anything we do. I think it's cool, and I think the world has a lot to learn from what we're doing.
The name Abney Park comes from the Abney Park Cemetery in London. Is there a reason for this? And why name yourself after a graveyard?
I started my music career in London. Actually, as a student, I went to the University of London taking music classes. And like a lot of young people, I got really fat-headed, decided I was way better than all my teachers, and dropped out after a couple of semesters. Whether or not that was a good idea, I have no idea, but when you're young, you get cocky. But Abney Park Cemetery was sort of near where I would hang out, and it was this really, really beautiful place, which actually I'm going to go visit in a couple of days, and I haven't been there since naming the band that, so that'll be fun.
Spartan Youth Radio is all about exposing Northern Ontario teens to alternative music. We don't play commercial, name-brand, top 40 music. You went against the beige plastic boxes of modern music. What do you mean by that, and how does Abney Park go beyond the boring of mainstream?
Well, the mainstream is full of a whole lot of bull. And I was thinking this the other day. Everybody's going to laugh or be shocked when I say this, but I actually think Britney Spears and that type are the least full of bull on the radio. And this is why I say that. You turn on the radio and you hear all these bands pretending to try to be rebels and pretending to try to be unique, and they're all matching each other because really they're just making a commercial product. And the reason why I would compare it to the beige plastic boxes of the computer industry is because basically they're all trying to be these carbon-copied images of each other they can mass-produce and make the most amount of money. Now, the reason why I say like the Britney Spears and the teen idols are the least full of... Oh, well, you're going to have to beat that one. The reason why I say they're the least full of it is because at least they're not pretending that they're not there just for the commercial value. Every square inch of them is all about just supplying the demand with the most appealing product. With steampunk, it's a little different. We don't really care about mainstream. If this thing never blew into mainstream, we'd be just as happy. And as a matter of fact, that's really pissed off some of the major labels that have called us up. We're not looking for that. If it happens on our terms, we'll accept it. But if it doesn't happen on our terms, we're having a hell of a good time now.
Before we go, if you had to pick one song that could stand as Abney Park's theme song, what would it be?
Well, if it was to stand as Abney Park's theme song, I suppose it would have to be Airship Pirate. And currently, that's one of our more popular songs. If I was to pick one song to be representational of our music, it might be Sleep Isabella or Stigmata Martyr. But to be our theme song, I suppose it would have to be Airship Pirate.
Thanks for taking time to talk to us today. This is Caitlin Dugan for Spartan Youth Radio, and I've been talking to Captain Robert, lead singer of the steampunk industrial world music band Abney Park. You can find them at abneypark.com, on MySpace, and on YouTube. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Bye.
It's nice meeting you, Katie. Hey, this is Captain Robert from Abney Park, and you're listening to Spartan Youth Radio.